Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie Klausner, and I am Odilo's Senior Marketing Manager for North America and Australia. Thank you for joining us today for the Digital Content Revolution is Here. Before I introduce our guest speaker, Jamie, let me go over a few webinar logistics. First, as you listen to the presentation, I'm sure you will have several questions or ideas for further discussions that you might like Jamie to address. So please just post those in the chat question feature on the right sidebar. If time allows, Jamie will get to those at the end of the webinar. In addition, thank you to those who submitted pre-webinar questions during the registration process. Jamie will be addressing those right at the start of the presentation. And finally, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar with everyone who registered. So, Odilo is very excited to sponsor this webinar and welcome Jamie LaRue, the former director of Douglas County Libraries in Colorado. While there, Jamie oversaw the development of the innovative DCL model, an independent platform for the distribution of both mainstream trade and original self-published digital content. He is the author of the award-winning book, The New Inquisition, and also wrote a weekly newspaper column for over 25 years. Today, Jamie writes, speaks, and consults on leadership, organizational development, community engagement, and the future of libraries. Jamie is also running for the next presidency of the American Library Association. So, without further ado, I introduce and pass it over to Jamie LaRue.
Well, thank you so much, Katie, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation. What I'd like to do here, Katie, if you can flip onto the next slide, and we'll briefly review all of the things we'll be trying to do here in the next hour. Okay, Katie, I do not see the slide, so I'll just kind of jump into what it'll do. First, I'm going to briefly address those questions that we had, suggested topics and questions for the pre-webinar. Then I'm going to briefly overview the current state of affairs. Where are we today vis-a-vis ebooks and libraries? Then we'll talk about what if things were different? What if we could change some of these fundamental problems in the marketplace? And then we'll introduce Rodrigo, who is the CEO of Odilo, and ask him some questions. And finally, if you can save your questions, as Katie mentioned, to the end, I'll try to leave some time to talk about those. So next slide, please. Now, my first question for you is if you can respond to this poll. As you think about the collection development budget that you have today, what percentage of that budget is going to the purchase of ebooks? So I'm not talking about journals and databases. What percent of your existing collection budget do you now spend for the purchase of ebooks? And if you could just go ahead and click on your choice. 0 to 5%, 6 to 10%, 11 to 20, more than 20, or you have no idea. So I'll give you folks just a few seconds to fill that out. And again, the reason I talk about this, and as we're waiting for the poll here to register, as I talk to many of the libraries in the United States, I'm finding very few who are spending any more than 20% of their budget. And yet one of the things that we've learned from recent surveys that have taken place in the United States, the Pew study was one of them, is that at this point almost half of our patrons, that's 50% of them, have some kind of ebook reader, and it tends to be their preferred format. Okay, and if you can wrap this up now, so click on your choice and then click Submit. And what we see here is that, okay, about 35% of you are spending between 0 and 5%. 6 to 10% of you are spending up to 25%. 8% 11 to 20, 5% for the 21% or greater, and 27% of us have no idea, which is not surprising. Very few of us have had the chance to sit down and look at those numbers. But the point to this survey is to begin to suggest that the market is changing far faster than we are. We know that the demand is out there for these ebooks, and yet our collection budgets have yet to keep up. Okay, Katie, if I could have the next slide, please. So some of the questions that I was asked at a time is that what would I predict about what's going on with digital content trends? How will that affect libraries and patrons? And here's my first big prediction is we will continue to see the demand for the things we have always gotten demand for. People still want print. Print is still going out of our libraries. And in the United States, we have 5 big publishers who drive about 50% of our purchases and perhaps 60 to 80% of our use. We call them the Big 5. In the short run, that's going to continue, but in the long run, I believe we will see more and more authors moving away from the Big 5 publishers, the big legacy publishers, and in large part that's because if I publish with Random House, I might get a 15% return on the revenues. If I publish with Amazon, I get 70% of the sale, and if I publish with Smashwords.com, which is an American digital publishing company, I get 85%. So over time, we're going to see that more and more authors are going to be moving to these independent and self-publishing platforms, and libraries are going to have to figure out a way to buy them. The second question was, why do I think libraries have embraced restrictive loan models? HarperCollins says you can only check out something for 26 times and you have to buy it again. Macmillan says it's 26 or 52 uses or 2 years, whichever comes first. I don't think that libraries have embraced these models. We have grudgingly accepted them because it was the only game in town. If people showed up in our libraries and they said they wanted to read the bestseller in ebook format, we tried to figure out a way to buy it. And the only way we could do that was by agreeing to the very restrictive demands of just a small number of publishers in the United States. So I think what this suggests is that because of those very restrictive kinds of licensing models, we've decided that it makes sense for us to look at the many, many other publishers and authors out there who are not so restrictive. Next slide, please. The question is, what about Hachette and Random House, 2 of the Big 5? Do I think they will change their pricing models soon? And the answer is no. I think that as long as they continue to make money at it, as long as libraries continue to invest in purchasing the ebook version of something we have already purchased in print, there is no incentive for them to change. So at this time of rapid marketplace fragmentation, we have to figure out a way to start bringing some of the new players on board so we can suggest to these legacy publishers that they need to change their tune. But I should point out that if I were these Big 5 publishers, I would worry about losing market share, because although the trend of ebook sales, the margin for an ebook sale is much higher for publishers, recent publishing data suggests they're not selling as many copies. And why is that? And I think it's because we're not seeing as many of these ebooks in libraries. We're not getting as many people who are exposed to that. So by pricing themselves out of the market, by making it difficult to deal with them, they're making it less likely that readers are going to find their books. So we need a partnership with new publishers and new marketing approaches, and I'll talk more about that later. And finally, there was a question about Overdrive. We know that Overdrive dominates the market, and that's true. Overdrive in the United States dominates the ebook market for 4 reasons. First, they were here first. They took the risk to make these books available to libraries. Second, they had the Big 5 content that our public was asking for. Third, they integrate with Amazon, and at this point in the United States, they are about the only ebook vendor that does that, and Amazon was another early market leader. Although I should also point out that these days, not so many Kindles are being sold. The market is moving more to tablets and multifunction devices, so that lockhold that Amazon had at the marketplace is probably weakening. And they've also been responsive. The fourth reason is that when libraries said, we can't integrate this with our catalog, we need application program interfaces. They did provide that. And we said, we can't buy the incredible explosion of self-published content like Smashwords. They made a deal with Smashwords. So what we're finding is that libraries have the ability to affect the marketplace by demanding that we have better terms so we can meet the needs of our patrons. What are the risks of dealing with just one big monopoly? It's the risk of dealing with any monopoly. You can see sudden price increases. Overdrive jumped their price by 600% a few years ago for platform fees. Overdrive has been not so transparent. We don't always know what agreements they've made with publishers to limit the sale of their materials to, for instance, consortial libraries. There's always the problem of vendor lock-in. If we leave Overdrive, we lose the content that we purchased through them because we don't own it now, we're leasing it. And finally, monopolies tend to be rough on the consumer anyhow. Okay, may I see your last slide here? What are my thoughts on libraries working with indie and self-publishing options? Here's the bottom line. Libraries have to start exploring non-traditional publishing sources. And the reason for that is very simple. If the authors are going to leave the legacy publishers behind, the bestsellers of tomorrow, and now we're seeing 50%, in some cases 16% of the New York Times bestseller list for self-published authors. The demand is going to go to these new platforms. So we have to learn more about that. I would say as we think about working with Amazon, Amazon is losing some of its lock-in. So I think that's a good thing for us. In the short term, all of these ebook trends mean we have a very fragmented market. There's not much agreement among the publishers or the vendors about how best to deliver things to libraries. But in the long term, if we can figure out a way so that the patron doesn't have to care about that, they just use a unified interface and they can find what they're looking for, then all those that fragmented market doesn't matter. Next slide, please. So where are we now? Most of us have now been in the ebook business in the United States since about 2009. And so first we scrambled to meet that new demand, but by about 2010 we realized that we had given up some things without talking about it. For one thing, we sacrifice the ownership of ebooks. We buy books, but we lease or license ebooks. That's a problem because, again, if we leave the vendor, then we lose the collection that we've spent our public money on. Second, we sacrifice discounts. In the United States, it's not uncommon for libraries to receive a 40 to a 45% discount on the consumer price of a book. But when ebooks came out, suddenly there was no longer any discount at all. And many of the publishers decided to increase their price. A very popular romance author, Danielle Steele, her ebook sells for $84 US dollars, as opposed to maybe the $12 that it costs for print. And so suddenly this meant we could buy fewer books. And that's a real problem when the demand for something is rising to have the price increase and the restrictions of the license increase. That made it very difficult for libraries to satisfy the demand. And finally, many of the ebook vendors, many of the ebook vendors, we sacrificed our user experience. Instead of finding everything in the catalog, we had to go to their own individual website to look up the books. That makes it very difficult. And how many catalogs do our patrons have to search in order to find whether or not the library provides access to that title? The next big issue was there was a worldwide recession. Library budgets lost. They fell by as much as 20% or 40% in some cases. We're only now starting to work our way back up to the resources that we had available before the crash of 2008. And then finally, as I've pointed out, there's this incredible rise in indie and self-published content. These two streams of content used to be a fraction of the larger commercial traditional publishing. Traditional publishing used to result in about 300,000 new titles a year. Well, now there are 500,000 new self-published titles, and there are about 300,000 new independent titles. Most of that content hasn't found its way into libraries, and yet clearly it is the most rapidly growing stream of content for the future. So these are problems libraries have to solve. Right now, it's a mess. Things are very difficult and hard for libraries to respond to. Next slide, please. So let's suppose that things were different. How would we change things to make the library and the ebook environment better? Well, suppose when you paid for something, you got to keep it. So it's not ownership, but it's perpetual access. It's a perpetual license. Suppose that ebooks didn't cost so much. I found when I was dealing at Douglas County Libraries with Smashwords, we asked independent authors, how much do you want to charge libraries? And the average price set by authors was $4 per title. Compare that to $84. Suppose that we could say, you know, I just want to look at one place to find all of the ebooks, all of the audio files, all of the video that I purchased from any vendor, Overdrive, 3M, Baker & Taylor, Independent Publishers Group, or Smashwords, and I just want them all to be in the catalog. I want people to do one search and find everything. If we could do that, we would take a large step towards making the library relevant and popular in this new emerging demand for digital content. Okay, now let's take another poll. So other than ebooks and e-audio, so books that are being read to you, and e-video, what digital content would you like to provide? And this question here is, you know, what are people asking you for? Or what do you think there's going to be a demand for that you may not carry at present? So again, look through this. Apps means software. People want to check out software. E-magazines, e-newspapers, music, either streaming or downloadable, or anything else. So I'll give you just a moment to select what you think people would expect the library to provide to them or like the library to provide to them. Okay, and we'll take just a moment for that to be coming in.
And Jamie, I'm going to jump right in and just share that for the other, please feel free to list what that other is in the chat box as well.
Good call. Okay, and I guess the one of the key issues about this is I think if libraries are going to survive and thrive into the future, we have to start getting ready. We can't just react to the marketplace. So if we can begin this conversation today about what new kinds of content we want, we can be talking to our vendors, or we can begin to take steps ourselves to experiment in offering this content. Okay, and I'll ask you to please make your selection and click the submit button so we can see the results of our poll to date. Okay, looks like they're coming through. And it sounds like the biggest demand is going to be for the traditional magazines and newspapers in this new format. And I know that many magazines and newspapers are losing subscriptions because people do prefer to read them on a tablet. Okay, well that's useful information that we can pass along to Odilo and other vendors to begin to get ready for the future. Okay, our next slide, please. Okay, now it's my great pleasure to bring Rodrigo, who is the CEO of Odilo, on board. You can see the slide here. These are all of the kinds of services that Odilo is now providing. There's an ebook lending library, e-audio, multi-device, a search engine, easy interface, and kind of a hybrid e-content model. So welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you very much, Dini. Thank you very much for joining us today.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the history of Odilo. How did the company come to be?
Yes, Odilo was officially founded in 2011, but it's actually a spin-off from a company with over 30 years experience in library technology management systems. We are headquartered in Madrid, but we have offices in New York, Miami, Colorado, Mexico, and Cartagena. When we started, we had 13 employees. In 2014, we had well over 60, with plans to grow even more in 2015 and beyond. Odilo allows libraries to manage, distribute, and lend digital content, along with document management tools and discovery layer solutions for both physical and digital content. We are happy that we have positioned ourselves firmly in this market in only 3 years of existence. And for instance, last year, the company doubled its sales. And we currently serve over 1,000 institutions in US, Latin America, Europe, and recently in the Middle East and Australia.
Wow. So it sounds like you're growing very rapidly. Why does Odilo want to expand into the North American ebook market? What makes us of interest to you?
Yeah, the idea was somehow try to bring our success into other markets. So for us, it's important to emphasize that we are a library technology solution company first. And then secondly, a digital content provider. And although ebook penetration is quite high in US public libraries, there are still other forms of digital content that libraries can leverage and make available to their patrons. This will be what makes them true anchors in their communities. When we partner with you, Jamie, and Douglas County Libraries, it provides us with a unique opportunity to offer an innovative hybrid solution. So you know that Odilo allows libraries in North America to quickly deploy the DCL model alongside the traditional content, aggregator, distributor model, and we do all of this from the same platform. And after this, when we successfully completed our pilot with the Colorado ebook statewide project, we saw that resulted in quite a lot of interest from other US-based libraries and consortia, as we were able to prove that this hybrid model has instant benefits for libraries.
Well, okay, so now I'm curious about this. I've done a bit of international speaking about the ebook market and some of the other vendors. But you, at this point, are pretty much the only international vendor that's playing in this space. So in your judgment, how does the United States ebook market differ from what you see in Europe and Latin America?
Okay, in general terms, libraries in Europe and Latin America are still starting with ebooks. So if you see the percentage of ebooks checkout compared to the physical books, it's lower than the USA. But I would like to highlight two, three trends that I saw that are more relevant in Europe and Latin than in the USA, maybe. So, for instance, one of them, and I think you can be surprised with this, Jamie, is that DCL model and ebook ownership is very, very relevant in those territories. And if you see in Chile, for instance, they created a national library system serving over 400 libraries, and the way they acquire content is always in perpetuity, and they used a model when they buy from aggregators, but they also directly negotiate by themselves. So, and if you go to Spain, they decided to have one contract from the platform and another contract for the content. So in those places that they are doing this, they are getting very good results because the price of ebooks is very, very competitive. And another trend is the consortia buying. So we are seeing a lot of networks that share technology and save money from content. So we see libraries partnering and sharing collections.
Okay, that's very good. You know, that's interesting to me. First, I'm very pleased that DCL has proven to be a popular model. And then I'm also intrigued that many other countries are going immediately to a national, a large consortial base. In the United States, that's been very difficult. All kinds of political barriers and some concerns about how do we resolve all these consortial issues. So I think it sounds like Odilo is ahead of the curve, and in some ways some of the other nations are taking a more holistic approach to the management of ebooks.
Yep.
I wonder if I can have the next slide here, Katie. So what does all this mean? And it means, I think, that Odilo's coming in to say that, well, first, you're very innovative. You're helping libraries figure out a way to integrate all these multiple streams of content. And second, and I think very important, and you just touched on this, Rodrigo, and that's the Odilo offers a cost-effective solution. I have been very irritated for a long time that publishers have withdrawn this kind of idea of discount, and I know that it's very difficult to be engaged in negotiations with them. They're very concerned that the price will fall too fast. But I believe, and the research supports this, that libraries help publishers sell books. So I understand that you have offered, there's a new program that you have to say that if we purchase e-content from these publishers, Odilo is offering us a 10% discount that we can then reapply to the purchase of new content. Is that correct?
Exactly, that's correct, Jamie. For instance, it's important to mention that our business model is not so based on content distribution than other distributors. Our business model is based on the use of the service, so we have the same interest than libraries, and that's the reason why we try to be very cost-effective with content, and that we try to open new streams of content for libraries to acquire. Yes.
That's very good. And then the last distinguishing feature, I think, of Odilo is that you are an international solution. It's a problem in the United States is that we forget that there's a rest of the world out there, and I think that you're bringing good, important information about the rest of the world to the United States. And then finally, the idea about finding a way to manage all of the digital content instead of having to play with 5 or 6 different players, all of whom have different contracts. So this is progress. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I've been very intrigued with is, as I mentioned, many of the authors, popular authors, they say, you know, why should I give 85% of the profit from, or the sales from my book to a producer when I can publish it myself? And I think there is now an opportunity for libraries to, as I say, swim upstream. Instead of just being the last point of distribution, we can talk directly to the authors and say, you know what, we want to feature the books written by people who live in our communities, or the music produced by people in our backyards, or the digital art plays, or the films or videos that have been produced. So what we can do with the Odilo platform is we can say, here's, you know, welcome to our content production team. Here's the URL. Please upload these things to our local catalog. And if, once we help people find this, if they're popular and they circulate, we can buy more of them. The users can view and rate the content, and something that I like very much, and that gets to the problem of ebook marketing in the United States, people don't know it's there. And so having a system that recommends the content, that says this has been very popular in terms of circulation, or this is rated very highly by our viewers, we can start to help our community discover this rich new content that might have been produced by people in their own backyard. So I think that's the ability for the platform not just to distribute content, but to offer a new way to engage with our communities is a very powerful selling point for your product.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, next slide, please. Something else that I like too is that as librarians are trying to figure out how to discover this content from vendors that we haven't worked with in the past. Independent Publishers Group would be one example, Smashwords would be another. Odilo has figured out a way to make this process easier. And so this is just a snapshot of the backroom option to go through and say, okay, I'm looking for materials that are featured on a list, or I'm looking for whole collections, and that's that top list. Here's something that there might be 50 books in this, there might be 10 books in this, but it could be a romantic series, it could be science fiction, it could be health books. It's one-click purchasing for multiple numbers of books. And you can see that the one that's highlighted, the D.P. Liley Best Books, it tells you how many titles are in the collection and how much money it costs to purchase it. So this is a true time savings for library staff as they're starting to explore these new streams of content. Okay, and then integration here, and I touched on this before. It's very frustrating for patrons to say, I'm looking in the catalog, and now if I want to search another catalog, I have to go to a different website that's organized in a different way, that presents its information differently, that has different features, that doesn't link back to all of the options that are part of my home catalog. And so libraries are now struggling to integrate the ebook vendor with their computer catalog. So sometimes the vendor says, yes, we have an API, but the library in the United States doesn't have the expertise to consume that API and integrate it into the catalog. So I think this solves a real problem in the United States to have Odilo's team that has worked with the ILS, you know, the vendors, the catalog vendors, that understands the metadata and the cataloging information and how to tie those things together and can quickly integrate the source into the discovery layer. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then lending models. This is, again, this is a period of great experimentation. Most of the models that we're seeing still use the one user at a time and one copy at a time, and so it's a perpetual license. And this is, in many ways, mimics or parallels what we've done with print for hundreds of years. But now there's the opportunity for new models to come up, and I think this is where the innovation happens. And I don't know if you can give us an update about where we are with this, but let me explain the model first. Often it happens in a public library in the United States where the demand for a particular title is very, very high. And so we might need to buy 400 copies of, Harry Potter books when they were coming out. But after a certain period, the demand for that book is no longer there, and suddenly we have many, many extra copies. So wouldn't it be nice if we could say we want to purchase, let's say, 2 copies for perpetual access, but we also want to add, for a short period of time, just to get us through that cycle of demand, many extra copies that we don't have to keep. So perhaps they're cheaper for us to buy, but they make some money for the publisher for the short term, but then we don't have to weed them afterwards. So this is a new kind of a model, a mixture of permanent access and temporary access. Another model would be a subscription. We just get everything that is produced by a particular publisher. Another one is there are some vendors coming out to say, you know what, we think this is not going to be a extraordinarily popular book, but it might be very popular when a community does one book for the whole community where everybody's going to be reading it in the space of a year. Suppose we could enable a special deal to provide multiple access to a title for some period of time. And then finally, there are some vendors out there, Total Books is one that says maybe people just pay for what they read, not what they check out, but what they actually read. So Odilo, if I understand this correctly, not all of these models are up and running at present. Is that correct, Rodrigo? But you are talking with publishers to try to negotiate many different kinds of terms with many different publishers.
Yes, Jamie, you are right. Our idea is to offer the publisher as many possibilities as possible so they can put their ebooks available for libraries. So we try to put all those models available for publishers so they can decide which better, and in most of the cases they will decide both with different prices for different models, so librarians will have the opportunity to buy depending on the unique characteristics of their library.
Well, and that's a wonderful thing to have a platform that manages all these very different licensing models, because otherwise I know that can be a headache. Next slide, please. So you mentioned as one of the trends internationally is this idea of consortial lending. And there has been in the United States some resistance by the Big Five. They seem to be very wary of this ability for libraries to loan things across institutional boundaries. So Odilo as a platform enables people to either use the existing networks, maybe there are 4 or 5 libraries that are already managing a catalog, so you can expand the number of offerings by sharing that investment in the technical infrastructure, and Odilo goes out and negotiates with publishers to say, yes, we're selling to a consortium and we want that to be understood up front. Or it might be possible for individual libraries to say, there's a local independent publisher right here in our region and we love their works and we've negotiated with them directly, and now we want to bring that to this larger international community or a regional infrastructure. So you seem to be targeting that consortial lending right from the beginning. But yeah, this is a snapshot from the Evoke website, and Evoke, Rodrigo mentioned this earlier, has been the state of Colorado's attempt to build a new shared consortial ebook lending platform. And as you can see, it's very visually appealing, very easy to navigate. This is, I believe, the patron view of that. Rodrigo, anything to add to consortial lending and Evoke?
No, that's the part you pointed, that libraries can negotiate directly, or we can use our content management, our content relationship manager to do it on behalf of them. So we try to libraries decide what's better for them for every publisher.
Well, and I should point out too that I think in the short run you're going to find a lot of libraries that will continue to operate in a mixed environment. They spend money with Overdrive, they spend money with 3M, they spend money with EBSCO, they spend money with local independent publishers, they have local independent authors, and it really doesn't matter, as I say, if there's one good, uniform, easy to navigate discovery layer, a front page that looks something like this, then the patron doesn't matter, and it's just all the work takes place behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a good example, Jamie, because in the one you are showing right now, there are different vendors. It's not only Odilo in this case, but the experience for the patron is always the same. They want to read a book. They normally don't care who was the distributor of this book.
That's right. That's right. Okay, and then I wanted to go back to this very important issue of an international presence. Many of our communities in the United States are experiencing influxes of immigration, and so we're having quite a demand for materials in non-English languages. And as I understand it, and Rodrigo, you might want to talk more about this, is that because you have been around, they have that 30-year depth of relations with various vendors and communities, and 3 years working with ebooks and distribution. You know a lot of international publishers, and you have partnerships that are pre-existing with those publishers and the distributors. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's right.
And so what that means is that if I have a sudden influx of of immigrants from Spain or demand for Spanish language materials, instead of trying to build from scratch popular, well-received content in the Spanish language, I can just speak to you and say, well, can you put together a collection for me based on what's popular in other countries? Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned here about analytics and reporting, and I wonder if you can tell us for a moment what kinds of reports do you provide? What sorts of things can you tell the library about these collections?
We try to basically have all the information about how every book is being working in the library, so they can know about the different locations, the different authors, and what is important for us is for collect acquisition managers, they will have the information about how books are performing. So if they have to buy more books, they will try to buy those that are more interested for their community. So we try to help library acquisitions manager to make a good decision.
That's excellent. Okay, so I wonder if I can have another poll here, which is our next slide. And this is, I'm just curious of those of you who are listening to this, from in your library collections, what languages might you be interested in purchasing more of? And so the ones that we've sort of seen as trends have been you need more English language materials, more Spanish, more Chinese, more Italian, or other. And as Katie pointed out before, if you click on other, go over to that chat window and put what particular language you'd be interested in finding more about. And I'll give you a moment to talk about this. Again, I should say it isn't too far here from where I am in Colorado, where there was a library very close to Denver that suddenly saw an enormous influx of Russian immigrants. Mm-hmm. And the demand for it, they were highly literate in their language, but they just wanted more information in the Cyrillic alphabet. And so the library buckled down and started buying many, many materials, and it became quite a unique collection. So I think that as the global environment is changing, I think I have a daughter who in the past 4 years has lived in France, has lived in Taipei, and has lived in Germany. We're going to see more and more demand for these languages. So if you could go through and click as many as apply, and then click the submit button, we'll find out. Okay, so I know we have some international folks here who are interested in the English language, perhaps from our country and others. And Spanish does seem to be the biggest demand that we're finding in the United States at present. So it's good to know people who live in Madrid, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Okay. And then now I just wanted to jump ahead here and say, so we've been rattling away here at you to talk about what I truly believe is a game changer in the ebook market. So to have someone who can come in and say we can scale up to large consortial borrowing arrangements, we can integrate multiple kinds of content, we can talk to different vendors, we can find international languages and distributors, we can help you purchase collections with a single click, and we can offer a 10% discount in a marketplace that right now seems to be avoiding them. All of these things are very powerful. So, Katie, back to you. Have we received any questions that have come in the course of the chat?
We have. So the first one is from Moira, and she asks, how did Telefonica get involved in the ebook market? So that may be, Jamie, feel free to answer, but it seems like it may be more of a Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, go for it. All yours.
Yeah, we are very happy that Active Venture Partner and the Telefonica Amerigo group decided to invest on us. So I don't know, the reason is like they would like to look for the opportunity to be in the digital market, and they would like to support companies from Spain that they were expanding worldwide. So for us, it's great to have such a good investors because they are giving us a huge opportunity to grow and to have really nice partners.
Okay, great. Here is another question, and I think this is probably for Rodrigo again. What is the current situation of Odilo in Spain, especially in academic libraries? Are you working to implement Odilo in any Spanish university?
Yes, we are present in the university market. So what we are bringing to the academic market, especially in Spain, that is different from anyone else, is that we allow, again, universities and academics to bring their own content. So we are working with several universities, and the same, we are doing some projects with the schools. So for us, our point is that everyone that has an interest of acquiring digital content and offer to others is very welcome to join Odilo. So the universities, our market in Spain and Latin America, that we think we are being successful, and we have very nice expectations for next years.
You know, and if I can kind of chime in on this one, I think that the idea of having an e-book distribution platform should be of great interest to a university. Many of the universities that I talk to now are being hammered by very, how would I say this, predatory pricing. And so the open access marketplace where scholars are publishing their works directly and sharing them with people instead of giving them away and then having to buy them back, Odilo could be a platform that solves many budget problems for independent scholars.
Yeah, the same thing that public libraries in universities, they want to have one single platform, as you said. They want to incorporate ebooks from the students. They want to incorporate the tests. They have a lot of content that they want to incorporate and they want to share. So we have seen in Spain really nice projects that libraries are sharing content. So that's they are creating consortia and sharing content. So there is a lot of opportunities for them. Yeah.
You know, and I should point out here too, again, notice the change here. We've gone from just being a distribution point for other people's works to actually becoming an independent publishing platform that highlights the works of the local community. That's a huge shift in the marketplace.
Exactly.
And so there was another question. Yes, we are recording, and a link to the recording will be sent out to everyone. And then I have two more questions. I think we're okay with time. One is that Odilo currently works in school libraries in Portugal, and I would like to know if Odilo works with school libraries in any other country.
We have, I think, we have projects in Chile. We were doing in Colombia, I think. That's I have to ask to my sales team. And we are trying to expand in Latin America next year. For us, the school libraries are similar to universities. We have the right contacts with the publishers, and they have the same idea of bringing the content from their teachers or content from alums. So it is something is part of our catalog. And it is something that we do in Spain, Chile, and Colombia so far, but we would like to expand.
Wonderful. And last question, is it possible to purchase content from Odilo and then upload it into Overdrive?
Why would you want to do that?
Well, I thought I'd throw it out there. I was wondering how that would work.
I'll give Rodrigo a chance to think about this.
Yeah.
Here's why that doesn't make sense to me, is that why would you take content that you have perpetual access to and upload it to a platform that would take it away if you left them? So that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. The way we work with Overdrive is the library is already working with Overdrive. We integrate our solution with Overdrive, so if they acquire the content with us, they will still have the patron will have access to the content from a single platform. So this way we'll merge what they have in Overdrive, what they can get from Odilo, or what they are getting from 3M or others, all in the same platform.
And actually, if I can speak to something else about this, I think one of the issues that many libraries are discovering is that patrons don't use the library catalog. They use the application that on their mobile device that they get from Overdrive. And so the concern, and I can understand this, as a library might say, I've purchased all these wonderful content, but my public isn't finding it because it needs to be in the Overdrive app. And I think there will be a bit of a competition here as we try to highlight the advantages of a new application that does a better job of integrating all of these different streams of content.
Mm-hmm. As you said, Jamie, our app that we will be presenting in ALA, we will bring the content, but not only from Odilo. We will try to bring the general catalog and another stream of content, so we can solve the same problem we had with the different websites. We can have the same problem with different apps for any vendor. So once again, for us, the idea is that you can have one app that you can have access to your whole library independently from the vendors.
Yeah, good.
So there was one follow-up question, and then I promise we'll move on, and it was regarding Odilo with school libraries, and they were curious if Odilo has any experience in the USA with school libraries.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Actually.
That's what I thought was the answer, but I wanted you to address. All right.
No, if I can comment on that one too,
Sure.
is that I see the school libraries, who often have extraordinary budget challenges. But I think they have, in many ways, the most to gain from many of these e-book platforms, so they could put textbooks and other books that are available. There's some wonderful children's authors, but I think that the biggest challenge that many of the school libraries face is just finding a technology platform that can deliver these materials. So Odilo may be a very good solution for them.
And then I think also we did get another question, but I think I can combine these two together. Do you integrate with EBSCO ebooks, and would Odilo replace books from eBrary or carry books from them? Which I'll let you guys answer. But
yeah, the way we work with EBSCO is we have several of our customers that are integrating our solution with EBSCO. So once again, with the same with other providers, we talk about our Drive, EBSCO, or 3M. We try to bring the content to the global platform, so they have the content they already have, or they can buy from EBSCO, but all integrated in one single platform.
and then is that the same with eBrary, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I would think too, one of the things we'll probably see is that many of the ebook vendors, distribution vendors, approach the same publishers to try to work out their deals. And I think that there's quite a competitive advantage. If Odilo starts to offer this 10% discount to purchase things, libraries will start to look at, say, this, okay, it's available from Overdrive, it's available from 3M, it's available from EBSCO, it's available from Odilo. Which one gives me the best investment for my, return on my investment? So this is a good change for the marketplace, a little more competitive.
All right. So at this point, I would like to thank you, Jamie, being such an inspiring thought leader, especially when it comes to libraries, technology, and digital content management. Thank you for sharing your knowledge today. If you'd like to continue to reach out to Jamie, there's his contact information. And if you have any questions around Odilo, please feel free to contact us. We will also be at ALA Midwinter, and we are having a little coffee chat about ebooks on the almost the last day of ALA Midwinter on Monday morning, that February 2nd at 10:30 in our booth. We'll have coffee and some treats, and just a really quick hour powwow about any other kinds of ebook discussions, pain points, or thoughts that anybody wants to just share and network around in the Odilo booth. So Jamie, any last and final words before we close this up?
Thank you all again for joining us, and for the kind words, Katie. I have great hopes for Odilo in the United States marketplace, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you.
And
thank you to Rodrigo as well. Any final words, Rodrigo?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I'm really honored and surprised for having so many people here from so many different countries for learning and discussing about ebooks and libraries. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much, Jamie. And thank you very much, Katie, for your perfect organization.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.